Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Naaman's Bogus Hangout. We've got a couple of guests with us already. Doc, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to for next week or so?
Hello, everybody. Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO and Search News Central. And I'm just like so many people in North America right now, eagerly awaiting the appearance of something resembling spring. Continuing to plug away on my efforts to get GDPR ready for me and my clients. And now Bill and Tim Collins have got me started on another little gambit of trying to make sure I'm ready for Gutenberg, which is coming before long, we think. So I think that's going to keep me busy for a week or three.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to for next week or so? You are muted.
How about now?
Now you're here. Now we can hear you.
Good afternoon, Bill. Thank you for allowing me to join the Hangout. I'm really excited. This is the first live Hangout that I've had besides Webmaster Tools with other folks. So I'm really excited to talk and share. And WordPress, as we were talking before we got live, is very relevant to what I'm working on right now. So I look forward to maybe digging into that a little deeper. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's good to have you join us. Terry, you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're up to for next week.
Terry Van Horn. I'm with International Website Builders as my company. I was founder of one of the founders of SEO Training Dojo and founder of SEO Pros. I've been working on some trying to get discovering new keywords for our client. Always good to expand the inventory. That's the easiest way to increase traffic. Find new stuff to optimize. So different audience should work out well for us.
You just came out with a new blog post. You mind if we share that with our audience?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm going to post it in the Hangout thread.
Yeah, I also found something that on your site, that was the only other real pertinent post I could find on it. So we seem to have some similar interests.
A little bit of overlap.
Yeah. And what I kind of found was what you said in your talk about a patent that come out in 2015 for discovering entities in a page. But I'm looking at a SERP and trying to figure out how they're basically separating these entities out. And the reason that I decided to write about it was this has been a problem that we have talked about for years. Then they fixed it or found an answer to it.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, we'll give you 10 if you need it.
Oh, good grief. And I didn't realize I was live. This shows how naive I am to this one. How do I mute myself? I think I muted my picture.
Top, there's some controls there.
Thank you. I won't do that again. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, I've done it. I think I did it last week.
So Bill wrote about a patent that Google released in 2015, which was about identifying and pulling different entities by contacts from pages. And what it looks like to me they've done is taken a lot of the same concepts and applied it to their own SERPs, which for me, it was huge in that of all the things that we've talked about as SEOs is their inability to handle queries like Jaguar, Apple, because they mean multiple things. Well, it's huge when Google can actually now differentiate those in a SERP. And
I found at that time when I wrote that I needed to do entity audits for websites because I was working on some sites. Like one was an apartment complex website that was 4 pages long, and it was just too short. They hadn't written about important things that people should know if they wanted to live in those apartments, like the fact that the DC Metro line was in their basement. You could take the elevator and ride down to the basement of the building, and that would let you out in the DC Metro, right where you can hop on subways. Yeah, it's good to know in case you don't want to commute to work and you can take the train.
Yeah, and Google would be interested in that because of the fact that it's an entity on that page.
Right.
Yeah.
And Google would share that. They would want to.
What was kind of interesting about it was I happened to be working in a query space for a long time that was ambiguous because there was a movie by the same name as the industry that I was working in. So that movie on that exact query, always in the past, was just on that one query. You would see the influence of that second entity. What happened after disambiguation was that that was not as true as it had been in the past.
Do you mind if we share that query in that movie name?
It's Office Space.
Okay, it's not Apocalypse Now.
Well, most anybody who's been around me for the last few years knows the client everything anyways. Yeah. And I even write article like this article has the company's name on it, that who I'm working for, because I discovered all of it while working with them. And my familiarity with that particular query space made it a good one for me to kind of try and figure out what was going on. And I found that it really did change the whole SERP. Like it went from being very localized because Office Space, once you get by the movie, is kind of a local thing. Like most people that are looking for Office Space are looking for something local. So before this disambiguation of SERP happened, they were all direct providers of Office Space.
So when the query term that you're relying upon is something that has two different meanings, and the meaning that most people use is one that you don't want. Like I had a food science company that wanted to optimize their website for the term food coloring. And they didn't mean the little plastic vials of food coloring that you buy at the grocery store to make your cupcakes the right color. They meant the additive that you added to different food products to make those food products that color when they're in the grocery store market shelf. You know, they were selling those to industrial producers of food.
Yeah,
and that's who they were trying to optimize for.
So you're aware of the how hard it is to work in a query space like that.
Yeah.
So after they did the disambiguation, all of a sudden, all of these local providers were not ranking. Like, I mean, basically, it used to have 3 or 4 things about the movie and then a whole bunch of providers. And if you did an exact phrase like Toronto Office Space, the movie nowhere to be seen.
So this was like the anti-possum update.
Yeah.
You know what? They were kind of very close together. In other words, I discovered this maybe a month or so after possum. And in fact, part of the reason I found it was doing discovery on possum.
Yeah.
The unverified update, local update. Because we got smashed on that. I mean, we went from ranking like crazy to apparently Google had lost all trust in us altogether. Like, it just wasn't happening. And yet every other query that was not Office Space, but say my virtual office and my meeting rooms and seminar space, those queries went through the roof. So we didn't lose anything off those places. So we knew that it was, we could say fairly confidently that it was directly the result of this change in how they were doing ambiguous queries. And what I've found is now it's just, it went from being our particular one went from being very localized to the point where a provider in BC who just listed Toronto Office Space,
Yeah.
they could not be found in that localized search, not ranking anyhow. Afterwards, it was full of classified ads, aggregators, up the yin yang. Like, it was, and
So there were results that weren't local.
they weren't
localized.
as local. It was as if they had taken distance out of the equation.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you just had Toronto on the page, that seemed to be enough to put you in the search.
So do any of you include near me on your web pages when you create them?
I don't optimize for that because I always thought it as they do that automatically. Why would I do that?
Right.
The graphic search is there, Bill. So when
Google knows if you're near something.
right.
So if you're just optimizing your page for the words near me, you may rank for something that's near me, but you may not be near it. And you may disappoint people who find your page.
I think
The
one time when something like that could be handy, though, is remote. Like, my daughter was going up north to see some family, and she wanted to make a stop in Carlsbad for lunch.
Yeah.
So while she's still here in Tijuana, she did a check for a particular restaurant near Carlsbad and found one in Oceanside.
Yeah.
So that works out well. But that, like Terry says, I mean, why would you bother to make a redundant modifier? They're doing it.
Google has also said that when people search near me, they're just giving the local results. They're not really using near me the way people thought they were.
If you remember, Google Maps used to have 2 fields, a what and a where.
Mm-hmm.
So you would search for whatever you were looking for and then the location. And that makes sense if you're traveling somewhere, like Doc's daughter. You want to go somewhere and you want to see something while you're at that place. But, to do that, you just search for the type of place and include the location in your query too. That should ideally help you find that place. And Have you tried using the events feature that Google added?
Okay.
So if you want to look for like Carlsbad musical events, you type that in and it'll show you things that are happening at the Museum of Making Music in Carlsbad, or at local hotels that are having performances, or coffee houses.
Yeah, actually, one of the projects I'm working on right now is being found for venues in Toronto, and especially small event venues.
Yeah.
Because those are very good product for us. We have a few rooms, and if we can keep them full, has a good return on the investment. So it's important that I keep those full. So that's something I plan on doing, is start listing the events that are taking place there and kind of promoting it more as a venue than as just a place to have a seminar. So
Yeah.
I'm upping the ante a bit. That means I can write a white paper and, gives me lots of stuff to work with.
Gentlemen, can I change thoughts for just a moment?
Sure.
We were discussing before we got live on the air about WordPress and some of its changes. I'm not sure, but I shared the link with some folks that I thought might benefit with this on your YouTube channel. So what we were talking about was the plugin of Gutenberg being added into the core elements of WordPress, and that editor and how it might affect WordPress itself, current WordPress, and also that against custom code and the implications. When we were talking about that, I said, oh, I wish we were recording, and now we are. And so I was hoping that we might be able to revisit that, because it's certainly very top of mind in my head. WordPress has its aspects to it that are brilliant. It was originally developed as an open source, as a blogging platform, and it was used that way for many, many years. And then people decided, oh, we can start building websites on it. And it became a web builder. And it's got such a huge open source community that it's got a lot of value. We also know that probably a third of the web is run by WordPress. So those are really amazing things. Then there's the cons, where we know that WordPress has its inherent limitations. And I think when we're talking about technology stacks and changing technology stacks, we always have to look at, what is the business need? Does WordPress fulfill that need? Does it do it optimally for what the end result is? And that's what we're all talking about. And I was wondering if we might be able to engage in that just a little bit.
Sure. So I went to WordCamp San Diego this past weekend, because I have a number of clients who are on WordPress websites. And I've been using WordPress for 12 years now. But having some really big companies as clients who are on WordPress sites shows it's not just a blogging platform anymore, even if they do blog. So the change is going to be a change to WordPress itself, part of the core part of WordPress, a visual editor program that's part of WordPress right now called Tiny MCE. And they've released a plugin that shows off this new change before the change takes place, which it'll go into effect with release of WordPress 5.0, and it's on like 4.92 right now, something like that.
And that's the Gutenberg plugin that you were referring to earlier, Bill.
Right, it's a Gutenberg update, and the Gutenberg plugin is something that's been released to give people who want to see what the new update is going to be like a chance to try it out.
Yeah, it's basically a simulator of the Gutenberg update because and they've actually said that it does not presently contain all of the functions that Gutenberg update will necessarily contain, and it also may contain some functions that could end up going away. It's a simulator just to give people. I think they're trying to dispel some of the concern.
Mm.
And they've been working with a lot of theme makers and plugin makers to help them prepare for when Gutenberg is released. So this is people's chance to make sure the themes they have still work with Gutenberg.
And this is with the core WordPress at the WordPress.com. That's where you're going to find this information.
WordPress.org.
.org. So sorry, thanks, Doc.
Whether it'll be implemented on the .com platform or not, I have no idea. I've never heard anything. I would suspect so, but no, we're talking about WordPress.org.
WordPress.org. Okay, great. Yes, I mean, this is quite interesting. And thank you for sharing, Bill, that you have been, working on WordPress sites. Like we said, 1/3 of the web is powered by WordPress. So it is really a strong, strong platform. I'm up against a situation where I'm changing frameworks from, as I told everybody before we went live, from HTML5 CSS3, 3-year-old code that was custom coded, and migrating into WordPress and knowing that I'm going to have some inherent issues. And those were the things that we were chatting about that were helpful. Because it's it's not can you just get this in WordPress? Because sure, we can get a WordPress site up in a day. Can we get it running optimally so that it's running like a Ferrari Boxer in a day? Probably not.
Not in a day. No, I think that the right developer can do with WordPress just about anything that is being done elsewhere. However, not out of the box. It's going to take some time and some budget to make those things happen. If I had a well-optimized HTML5 CSS3 site, I would not change it to anything.
Nope.
To me, that's the ideal. If it's well optimized, I would not change it to anything, and I certainly wouldn't expect to be able to do what I'm doing with that site on WordPress without probably spending more than I spent initially. And I know the ease of WordPress appeals to a lot of people because you can train somebody in a half an hour how to go in and build a post, modify a page, update things, update the site. Sure, it is user friendly from the back end, with a minimal amount of training and experience. But the cost of customizing to the degree that you can achieve with a well-built HTML5 site, you could hire somebody who knows HTML5 in-house to do all of your updates for you for less money than you could update a WordPress platform to achieve the same end.
And your WordPress platform doesn't have to be perfect when you launch a site. I was a member of a small business bloggers meetup group, and I gave a presentation to the group at one point in time and showed them my site over a period of 10 years, how it changed and developed, how I added things, how I removed things. And that's part of the beauty of having your own website. You can add things. You can update. You can add plugins. You can add different designs, different themes, different features. It's part of what makes it fun.
I agree with you 100%, especially with upgrading WordPress to WordPress. That makes a lot of sense. I'm in the situation that I'm up against is that half of my site is in WordPress for the blogging aspect. The other half is built 3 years ago in HTML5 CSS3, and it's got AMP on it. It's got schema markup on it. It's ranking in the engines for the top queries within its category. And I know that if I keep the metadata the same and I keep the page content the same, that I have a chance to rise back up to the top. but to take that hit and to take that amount of work to rebuild doesn't seem like that's a good cost-effective ROI. Especially, I've heard that from all of you.
There are ways to avoid having your design impact you negatively.
Oh, of course, Bill.
If you add schema markup, if you do it in JSON, as opposed to some of the
I'm
other.
talking about migrating a current site.
Right. And what I'm saying is, if you use something like JSON, you don't have to, and instead of markup that's built into the HTML that you're using, if you change your template, you can just, the JSON is independent of your HTML, of your template.
Sure.
You know,
yeah, well, finish up there, Bill. You done?
I'm close to done. I'm just saying that you can avoid having to do some work by choosing wisely.
Sure. Choosing your technology stack is wise. Terry, what are you shouting out?
Well, I'd say there's two things. When I look at this situation, number one thing I'm going to think is, why WordPress? If it's because the client wants to be able to publish their own stuff, fine, no problem. Can do that. I do that now. I run the websites that I usually build. I'll have a blog for the user, for the owner of the site to be able to add content. But for the SEO part that I'm usually responsible for, I'm writing it my own code because I can do so much more. I can make the page run faster. I can make the page a lot less code heavy. And even, does that help with the rankings? No, but it definitely does not hurt. And it makes it a lot easier for the search engine to determine what the hell is in the code.
Yes.
So it makes it easier for the search engine to segment your page and understand your page. And here's the thing. People don't realize just because you don't build a page on WordPress, right? I can still use every component of WordPress that uses CSS or JavaScript, because those things run outside of WordPress. They're just files that have coding in them. So
when it comes to SEO, the most important part of my knowledge of SEO is how the search engines work, not how different programming platforms work.
Yep.
And when you've got something that's running optimally, and you have the ranking, you have then changing technology foundations or stacks is not so advantageous. If you've already achieving your goal, you're amped, your schema markup, you've got all that, you're going to have to redo some of that.
the
Oh, you have
dumbest
to redo
thing
all of that.
SEO can do is change a page that's ranking. If
Sorry?
the goal is not to increase the ranking, but to just change over and maintain the ranking, they're fools to change anything.
You're going to have an impact. That's
Yes,
a given.
either way.
I know.
And to minimize the impact, you won't avoid it entirely, but to minimize the impact, you're going to spend a lot of time and money.
A lot of time and money. And
Yeah.
does that time and money could have been better spent at looking at the content and see what's ranking, what's not, and enhancing the content there? Since the client makes such little changes on their own, I suspect, and I hate assuming anything, but they're integrating Salesforce into their business, and they may have an API code that says insert this API into WordPress. So that may be the deciding factor. I don't
you
know.
can do the same thing with straight code by accessing the API. Right. All the plugin does
is
remove the programming to bring the API in. That's all it really does.
That makes
it may interpret the API and control the display. But that can all be I can guarantee you that that company has code that can be implemented outside of WordPress
Oh, absolutely.
very easily.
I know. And it's just as I was making the comparison when we were talking about this, and thank you, gentlemen, for addressing this with me, is that the site is now running as a 3-year-old BMW 328i. It's got this speed, it's amped, it's optimized, it's well optimized. It's ranking in some of the top queries right against some of the Fortune 50 in this industry. So I can make a lot of preservations, but I certainly can't guarantee that I'm going to stay indexed and ranked where I am right now with what I have without a lot of extra work and a lot of extra money that could have been spent elsewhere.
Yeah, I
agreed. Also, properly coded site. I never build a site in a manner that I couldn't change the appearance of that site by changing 3 files called header, content, and footer. That's all there is to it. Like the thing with themes, if you have no talent, yeah, it's a problem. But, you know, everybody, if you don't have the talent, I just go to Dave and say, hey, I need some images. How much are you charging me? It's that easy, you know, like people make things out to be a lot harder than they are, generally because that benefits them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and, you know, some of the most important changes you can make to a website isn't the code, it's the marketing. If you have marketing gaps, things that you aren't offering as services, but you ideally should be, there's room in your industry for them. There's something you want to offer, and you don't have competitors who are offering those things. It's an opportunity that you should be taking advantage of. And spending time changing your code instead of creating content that focuses upon offering those services is a mistake.
Yeah.
I agree, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. You know, especially when you look at your pages, you know, your pages that are ranking, you know, your pages that are getting a high bounce. So you could be looking at that content and say, geez, I'm ranking, but the bounce is really high. Let me put that into changing that content.
Well, bounce is a difficult metric to make decisions on. I would watch that.
People are not engaging with that page. So,
okay, but they may, your metric may be a sign that somebody's finding your page, finding a phone number on it, and calling.
Oh, sure.
So
yeah.
You know, your bounce may be a sign of success, not failure.
Oh,
yeah, you also have to think if you've done your job right. People shouldn't have to go to another page. They land on the page and they can buy it there. So why would they not just buy it there? And that would be a bounce in a lot of analytics programs.
Well, you see a bounce on a
really
contact
look
page.
at that stuff and not say it's got a 67% bounce rate. It's why does it have a 67% bounce rate? What are they clicking on when they leave there? You know, and then you have to address, did I target the right keyword? Is this keyword even right for me to be targeting?
Is it the right user?
Are the questions you should be asking, not changing the design or the page unless it's to improve the conversion.
Absolutely. That's what makes sense, Terry, 100%. And on a 67 bounce rate, I'll take that for a contact us page. Hey, contact us. Here's our directions. Click to call. And that's already in place. That's fantastic.
The way I look at a bounce rate is look at the time on page, right? Look at how many other pages they looked at in the session. And those give you a lot of clues as to, you know, is that bounce rate appropriate? And it gives you answers as to what's happening.
Right.
Is it informational or is it transactional? That makes a difference too.
Yeah.
Sure. It's not, you know, this is not a consumer sell, so it's not a quick sell. It's a B2B educational sell. So there's many funnels before a conversion happens. But, you know, conversion can be as much as a phone call in, you know, directions to the business, or the landing page, fill out the form. So there's 3 conversions happening and being tracked in Google Analytics right now. But I think that everything that you guys have said, yes, everything can be done in WordPress, but I'm trying to retrofit my 3-year-old design into new WordPress. And does that make sense for the client and for them to spend their money that way?
Mm-hmm.
That was the question.
And so would I.
You guys are expert SEOs. And
Now, if they were Joomla, I would say hell yes.
Yeah.
Joomla.
Yeah.
I've been on that, or Magento. I don't know. But you know, the reason we change technology stacks is to add functionality. There has to be purpose. That purpose has to support the business goal. And if it means that, hey, we've added Salesforce on our back end and we have a snippet of code that belongs in WordPress, I think that maybe that part of this is a lack of communication, because they're asking for a lot of work that's already implemented.
Salesforce made themselves compatible with WordPress long after Salesforce was a fully functional platform. It was an afterthought because there was a big market share out there to be had amongst a burgeoning new market of businesses using WordPress. So they decided to go after it. But they know how to handle HTML sites and Joomla sites and Drupal sites. And, you know,
of course.
It's just WordPress was another CMS, and they decided they should make it easy because they recognize the fact that a lot of WordPress users who might be interested in using Salesforce are not coders. They're not code monkeys. They could use a slightly easier path. So it probably took one of their developers an extra 15 minutes to write a different API call. But they're calling the same damn thing. They've just given you a different tool to call it.
Sure.
So, you know, Salesforce can be implemented anywhere.
Thank you for that. I think that what has always been my approach to all of this has been, what's going to be the most success and give the greatest ROI to the client. And we don't say, let's just do this for the heck of it. We have to do it based on a business reason. When you're ordered to do something, I'm not power hungry. I'm just being ordered to take something out of operable state and rebuild it and try to keep up and regain my SEO that I've built in over the last 3 years. And does that make sense from a business side?
Well,
that
sure.
would only make sense if the client felt that way. If they
Debbie, about 3 years ago, I fired a very lucrative client because they wanted me to go out and buy them. They actually tracked the guy down and found me this deal. They wanted him to install 10,000 new links on their site over the next 2 weeks, okay? This is a site that was 3 years old that had a total of 120-some links to date. And they want to add 10,000 in 2 weeks. I said, no, I fought, I argued, they got pissed off. They said, you'll by God do it or we'll find somebody else. I said, good.
Yeah,
I'll make it easy for you because I do not care to add to my client list a failure. And you are going to be a failure. You're going to get penalized. You're going to disappear from the SERPs. And I don't want your company on my client list. And about 4 months later, they were cratered. They got penalized.
Wow.
And I'm surprised it took that long. I really would have expected it to happen in 2. I mean, with that kind of link velocity. But, you know, who do you want? I don't want a client that if they make a bad decision today that ends up costing them a lot more money and perhaps losing some business, even though it was their decision, down the road a year from now, they're not going to remember that part. They're going to remember the fact that Debbie was there and we're not going to hire her again.
That's why I document it. I make them write off by saying I recommended that you not do this. You decided to. You've written it off now, so I am totally not responsible. This is your doing. Always get the client to write off that this was their idea and they told you how to implement it.
I actually found it on an image search one time, Terry, a little animated GIF, a hand washing, and sent it to a client. Okay, he says, "What's your edit?" He says, "Here's what we found. This is the guy recommended this, and this is what it's going to cost us. What do you think?" And I just sent him back the emojis. I washed my hands. Okay, point taken.
I think that when you've worked with someone for so very long and you have a level of respect for the client, there also becomes a complacency along the way where, you know, they don't feel like they maybe have made the progression that they want. I'm not certain where the disconnect happened. And it may have been, you know, oh, we'd like to have better control of our site, as we were talking about Bill earlier. And that's possible.
That's what you need to find out, Deborah.
Those things are really important. Yeah. And if that was the case, I would actually know it since I've been managing it since 2008. I realized that they don't make that many changes. So, you know, making that business decision is going to have to be theirs. And it has to be based on fact and data, not on, geez, my gut says this is wrong. It's really
no. Tell them how many changes. Tell them how many changes they've made and how big those changes were. And then say, do you really want to risk where you are now? And you're only making this amount of changes. And definitely let them know that you would suggest that they leave things as they are and add a blog so they can add anything they want. But replacing the pages that are already in place makes no sense.
Oh, I have one of the team members on, and they were saying that they want to be able to make the changes themselves, and they want to focus on lead sources that convert. That's their goals. So that's interesting that they're doing a shout out, because I invited them to listen because this was so pertinent. Making changes themselves makes sense. We understood that. And lead sources that convert is an interesting, that's not why we choose WordPress. Lead sources.
No, that's targeting more than anything.
No, that's with your rankings, and you don't. You know, if that's your concern, the last thing you want to do is anything that's going to even temporarily give you a hit to your rankings.
Say that again, Doc, because that's exactly what they're asking. They're saying, we want to be able to get better lead source. WordPress is going to do it for us.
No, WordPress is not going to do anything one way or the other on leads. Okay.
Ask them why they think that then. That's what I would do. Follow it up with a question. What is going to give you more leads using that technology? I think they want to be able to add more blog posts and be able to target traffic directly without having to go through a whole bunch of people.
Yes,
Terry. They should be coordinating that with their social platform, where they should really be doing that.
Debbie,
they have their blog. Just to interject, their blog is in WordPress right now.
Yeah, I thought you had said that.
Yeah, their blog is in WordPress.
I wouldn't take the pages off. WordPress is not going to improve rankings.
We're on WordPress. We're on WordPress for blog. We have our blog in WordPress. We have the main site in HTML5.
I leave it like that.
Yeah. There's no reason in the world to be concerned with changing it. You're not going to gain anything by changing to WordPress in terms of rankings or leads. Nothing whatsoever. You may not lose anything long term, but you're definitely not going to gain anything.
It's going to require using some different approaches and some different tactics, like social listening, to make sure you've identified the right audience that you're targeting and you're using the right terms, the language they expect to see in your pages that they may search for to find what you're offering. If you don't do those, if you don't add those, it doesn't matter what type of platform you're using. You know, if you're using
Doc, who's a pretty big proponent of WordPress, will tell you it's a lot easier to optimize for SEO purposes code rather than trying to optimize WordPress.
Absolutely.
Because with WordPress, some things you change, they can overwrite them.
That's the problem.
So you have child themes and all sorts of other, and it's just adding more risk and management to the site. To like managing a large site on WordPress is not easy.
Right.
It is possible to make a WordPress site search engine optimized. Well,
Sure it is, Bill. If you've already done work for 3 years and you've already got it amped and you've already got
AMP doesn't help SEO. It doesn't help ranking.
No, I'm just saying you've got
all it does is
those are not going to migrate over when you migrate.
AMP just uses an abbreviated version of HTML and JavaScript to make pages faster, but it doesn't help with your rankings.
But it's not
WordPress wouldn't hurt it because AMP pages are actually hosted on Google.
Yeah, they're totally independent. So it doesn't matter where you are. You're not going to lose those AMP pages.
In the migration,
you not break the code.
You're not going to lose them?
No. Shouldn't.
No, but you got to make sure that the code is properly migrated so that it's transmitted from the WordPress platform. And that shouldn't be a very complex thing to do. I say shouldn't. I haven't done that, so I can't say for sure, but I would think it should not be a terribly complex thing to do to keep you from losing the AMP pages. But like Bill says, AMP pages have nothing to do with rankings.
No, but they have everything to do with speed, and Google loves speed.
And right, but that doesn't help rankings of your pages on your site.
Oh, right.
Exactly.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, WordPress. People, I don't know how it ever got started that just using WordPress as SEO was never right and never will be right.
Well, do you remember, Terry, and it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I heard somebody say, and I think it was after a video that Matt did, saying something about, yeah, I know, Google likes WordPress. So all of a sudden that became Google prefers WordPress on everybody's lips. Everybody thought that.
Well, for sure it works because it's a platform. It knows the WordPress footprint. You can be guaranteed that they know the WordPress footprint.
Oh, anybody can spot that out. What I'm just saying is that we do that all the time. They'll say that that's a nice shade of green, and Google says everything is green. You know?
Yeah, that would be the SEO thing. Yeah, I agree there.
WordPress did offer an opportunity for people to publish their own content, and it was an improvement. It was an improvement upon some other blogging platforms like Blogger.
Yeah.
It allowed people to be able to create sites that were not technical, and that's brilliant. That's brilliant, but and it's grown from there. Look at the workshop you were just at, Bill. You know, with the Guggenheim plugin coming out, it's it's certainly not it's a CMS that's live and moving and growing, and a third of the web is powered by it. So
right, that's the other thing about WordPress. It has lots of developers working on it. If you have questions about WordPress, there are support forums you can go to and ask, and chances are you can get answers.
But for what you're facing right now with this HTML5 site, if it were successfully converted over to WordPress and optimized to a similar degree, a lot of those developers are not going to be much help to you unless you want to take them on for 30 or 40 hours, because it's not an out-of-the-box install that you're talking about. It's going to be a highly customized installation to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And you're going to take a temporary hit. And that temporary hit may be a couple of months. It could be, 6 or 8 months. You don't know. It's going to take time to recover even assuming that you can, anytime you make a platform change, you're going to take a hit. So to me, it just seems to be a lose-lose situation.
Oh, Doc, that's so interesting that you said that, because, one of the things that you want your clients to be successful, and you want them to make the choices based on the business needs, not that there's a bright shiny new object in the room. Oh, let's grab that. You want them to be able to get return on investment. You want them to be able to get the conversions. You want them to be able to get the level of conversion. So get your, as Terry was saying earlier, use your social voice to reach your audience and keep leading them there. If you've got the right content, if you've got the right message, if you're offering a good service, you're going to get the type of lead gen that you're looking for. Don't change those other things that are working, because you're going to use the money right up. I'll burn that money up trying to get a custom coder to get, the whole site just in WordPress.
To me, sites are always two parts. One part informational, one part transactional.
Sure.
Informational that's where WordPress becomes a little, to me, the easiest thing, because that's the easiest thing for clients to use.
Right. And that's why their blog is in WordPress, so that they can easily get into it. Right. I just don't know what the business reason is to change the site.
Also, here's the thing, right? Like with most plugins for WordPress, when a lead form goes in, if it malfunctions, you don't even know that took place.
Well.
Ouch.
I found that out the hard way. No leads coming in, and figured out the third-party forms weren't working.
Should test your contact forms, test your lead forms.
Periodically.
Make sure they're working. Make sure they haven't failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Update your plugins. Make sure.
You know what broke it? It was actually Google's CAPTCHA that broke it.
Oh, how good. See, so there's so many variables.
That's what I mean. And because it was done with a plugin, chances of me finding that were a lot slimmer.
Sure. Personally, I want what's best for this client, and I'm sure all involved in this team want the same thing. So I've appreciated that you guys have given the time to talk WordPress and to talk, because it's got some amazing value. And Bill, you've seen that, you've shown it. All of you have worked in the arena of WordPress, and with this Guggenheim plugin coming out, Sorry. Gutenberg, like the original The Press, man. I remember. Right. Uh-huh. So with Gutenberg coming out, that we've got a lot of more opportunities, and that could enhance their blog, and we could take that extra money that they were going to spend on migration and use it to hone in on their leads more, refine pages more, if that's what their true business goal is, to bring in better leads. So,
yeah, well, if they're going to do that, instead of buying new, instead of replacing stuff that's already worked, figure out what you want to sell, go to AdWords and see how much you can, how much it's going to cost you to get direct leads to go to those transactional pages.
It's very expensive.
And do the cost-benefit analysis to see if it's worth doing the paid search.
That's another thing it does. It tells you, are these pages converting? And, I like PPC for a few things. Discovery is one of them. If you have a little bit of budget and you want to learn what really works on what's tipping the scales on a sale, PPC is one of the best ways to do it, because you can control the message start to finish.
Yes, and you can count the conversions, and you can see the actual searched terms, which they've now, they hid from Google Analytics. You can see it, the actual search terms in AdWords, and that is really helpful.
One thing that I learned from PPC, I was working on a payday loans project. And by just adding to the ads 3 minutes to fill out the form, increase the conversion and sales. And that has nothing to do with anything other than I gave an additional piece of information that I started using on the website and found the same things happening.
Yeah.
So,
I'd make one other comment too, Deb. If they're interested in leads, are they interested in lead generation or lead development or lead conversion? If conversion is their issue, you might also look at something like dynamic keyword insertion.
Oh, I've done that with thank you. I've done that with PPC. They're looking to get to reach their ideal target audience, the one that converts, that is best matches their ideal target audience.
Exactly.
And so
the platform will have absolutely zero to do with that.
I know it will, and it's been very beneficial. And I think one of the team members has joined in and asked a couple of questions that really helped. So I didn't mean to monopolize the time. It's really great. WordPress, we're going to get with regardless if we change the whole website into WordPress, because it's an order and not a consulting decision. Then if I'm ordered to do that, then we can do it. It's just going to take a lot of backpedaling to regain where I'm at right now for the main site. And with our WordPress site attached to it, we can still harvest Gutenberg and utilize some of these builders and all the fun stuff that comes with WordPress. WordPress ranks. WordPress is great. If it wasn't, people wouldn't be using it.
Mm-hmm. We're close to the top of the hour, and I have everybody say goodbye and share a thought with our audience. Doc?
Well, gosh, thoughts. I'm so wrapped up in what we've been talking about. You caught me off guard. I guess, one of the things that this conversation kind of points to is, especially as consultants when we're dealing with our clients, every decision should be made with our heads, not our hearts. Don't go do this because you've always wanted to try that, or because your guy next door is doing that. Do it because it makes business sense. That it's going to make you or your client more money, more effective, build better reputation, whatever the goal may be. It should be a business decision, and that means that emotions have to be left out of it. Don't do something because somebody else is doing it.
Terry, you have any thoughts?
On that, no, I've pretty much been doing things the same for so long. Hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Old dogs.
Anything else about like disambiguation or something like that?
Oh, yeah, I'm continuing, like that will always interest me, but I'm also looking at, we'll probably continue it next week. I'm looking at the link graph now, trying to figure out some things. Somebody's kind of written something already that I don't really agree with, so I'm going to have to straighten that out in my, I'm going to have to figure out, is this guy right or is he wrong, type thing. Because I think it will, like, he did make one good point, is that no matter what they do, things are changing and you should be aware of it. As far as the link graph goes and mobile and desktop, what's going on there with the link graph, we'll probably continue that after we shut down.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, any thoughts to leave our audience with?
Well, I thank you for listening and participating in one of the client things that I have on my plate. And I think that a lot of it really boils down to perception. It's what the client perceives. And so The client ultimately makes the decision. That's their website. It's their decisions. We can only, as practitioners, guide them and show them the pros and the cons, because there's no one straight way to operate on the web. There's many flavors. It's just how to reach your audience as efficiently, effectively, with the right message, and getting them to convert. So that's my thought on it. Thanks for letting me share that, Bill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So my own thought was, I went through the new patents that Google was granted this week, and some of them were really interesting, like content updates and stuff like that. Then I noticed that they were continuation patents, that they were updates to old patents. And so I looked at the changes to try to get a better understanding of how they may have updated. And the updates weren't that impressive. They really didn't change that much. So I wanted to write about them and decided really
Nothing to say.
didn't have a lot of value.
Well, it's not another Penguin 3 or something, right?
One I called the Groundhog Update.
Oh,
because
Groundhog Update.
it originally happened on Groundhog Day, and it didn't seem worth reliving.
You know, it's interesting when you see a continuation off of an old patent like that, because it makes you wonder why. You know, does this mean that they have implemented or are implementing it, and then they're seeing a way to expand it a little bit? Or does it just mean that they see a competitor is doing something, they want to try to lock them down a little bit? You know,
it seems like it would be likely that they're using it, and they've changed around the way they've used it.
You would think,
But
yeah.
you can't be sure. You know, one of the most impressive of those was one that they added Panda to a locally significant query patent that talked about adding location to organic results, which people referred to as the Venice update when it came out.
Yeah.
And Panda rewrote that in a number of ways.
You know what else it could be, Bill?
What's that?
Just somebody in Mountain View said, "Hey, hold my beer, watch me screw with Slosky."
They love you up there, Bill. Come on. There's some friends there. Just don't go work for them. Then we'll be sad.
No, I can't do that.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. And this has been an awesome hangout.
Oh, thank you, Deborah.
All right. Take care, gentlemen.
You too.
Later.
Bye now. And we're going to close this. Thank you, everybody.